It is a first down. Pirates.
You can paint this one purple. What an incredible win by the ECU Pirates.
Welcome into Blackbeard's Alley, a pirate football podcast. We appreciate everyone tuning in. Be sure to like, follow, comment, and subscribe, be it on YouTube or Spotify. This is our UTSA recap show. Old news at this point, but a lot going on these last few days, and wanted to address what happened last weekend, and that was East Carolina falling 58-24 to UTSA down at the Alamodome. The Roadrunners with that conference winning streak to, I guess, 25 games now. I'm tired of hearing about it, but nonetheless, East Carolina, it was downhill from the start last Saturday afternoon. The Pirates, allowing the Roadrunners to score on their first possession, and then had the opportunity to stem the tide a little bit, unable to do so. Some missed throws, some crucial penalties, and pretty much anything that could go wrong seemingly did go wrong down in San Antonio. But to break it all down over the next 15 minutes or so before we bring you a FAU preview, very excited to be joined by Jason Tyndall. Jason, how are you?
Good, Bubba. Obviously tough out for ECU there in the Alamodome, and there's been a lot of conversations before the game and also after the game about some of the environmental factors, flat field, turf, different style of turf, pumped in noise. One of the other ones I think is one of the most important, maybe a lot of slaps on the back following the Memphis game all week on campus. But those things can't really play a point or a factor in the game. It comes down to just executing. And obviously we didn't execute at the level we're used to. And it's the first time as Pirate Nation and the football program itself has felt like this probably since the Army game when Mike Houston was about to be let go. So disappointing. And this game's either going to be a blessing or a curse. And why would I say that? Number one, it's either going to be the wake-up call we need. And if our culture is what we all believe it is and what we've been told it is internally, this is the butt kicking that will wake us back up and make sure we're laser focused to go down to Boca Raton this week against a really talented FAU team who offensively scares me to death. Or it could be a curse. We've seen these games in the past with other programs, not just ECU, that as you're wrapping up a long season, a lot of games in a row, a strange schedule this year. It could be the nail that seals the coffin for us. We've got 2 games left. We've got this game and the bowl game, and let's just hope that it's the latter. It's the blessing to get us woken up and refocused again to play Pirate football at the level and with the efficiency we expect.
Yeah, like you mentioned, that emotional high of the Memphis win prior to the UTSA trip, that did concern me. And who knows, not being there, how much that played a role. I would imagine it had a factor, or was a factor, I should say. But at this point, as you say, it doesn't matter. It's all about how we handle the adversity, everything that happened in San Antonio, how quickly we're able to learn from it, flush it. And, one of the things that just stunned me, just not so much just that we didn't compete, but just some of the frustration things that we saw, and we'll dive into it more. But just penalties that were at crucial times, and then also late in the game, you're getting beat by 35 or 40 points, and you're dancing after you score a touchdown, and obviously we had a lot of things that were concerning on the afternoon, but that was something that it didn't sit well with me.
Yeah. No, it seems like every shot we had to rather kick off some momentum or capture some momentum. We had some sort of boneheaded play or, questionable call at times, and that's just football, right? The celebration in the end zone, I go back to what Lane Kiffin said earlier in this week. These kids are wired differently than we were. It's just a different world. And I think they love the fun aspect of the game. And I would have a hard time celebrating when you're getting your teeth kicked in like that. But I'm not going to go out there and be upset with the receiver who made that play. I just think it's a time and a place for it, and but at the same time, the game should be fun. But when you're getting your tail whipped like that, it's hard to really kind of toot your horn. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Don't want to make it a bigger deal than what it is, but that is one of those things. I agree I do think it's a generational thing. It didn't shock me to see it, but at the same time, it was frustrating. But kind of going back to the X's and O's and things, very, very impressed with the way UTSA, went about things, using screens and draws. And I know a lot of this, if not all of it, it was not unanticipated, but they executed almost flawlessly in many aspects. And I did like the way one time, I think it was maybe their second or third touchdown of the game. I think that third that made it 21-0. They had a bunch trip set and then had the guy on the ball. Maybe it was Amaduro or something to that nature. But he ran a middle screen and took it to the house after faking the block.
Yeah, we didn't do well making plays in space defensively, and not only in the passing game as you alluded to, but also the running game. We just didn't seem to have our footing, and I'm not blaming the field. I'm sure we have the right shoes on, et cetera. We just didn't seem to take that last step to finish plays and to get there, or our eyes were in the wrong place. And that's a lot of times when you see plays like that happen, somebody's key is not being accounted for. They're key in somebody else's key. So they're covering up. There are two people who are doing the same thing, as opposed to everybody's got a gap or a key that they're supposed to be alerting on. And it just seemed to happen more and more in that game. And as we got behind, that snowball started rolling on us.
And I talked about the way Owen McCown was used. I really don't think he threw a pass over 15 yards in the game, and I think the 15-yarder came on the first possession on the flea flicker. But a variety of screen passes, play action passes. He's very good at the play action fakes, and then the running back Henderson. He's a legit 10-3 guy.
Yeah, and you think about it, we didn't have any pressures or any sacks, and part of it is just their scheme. And against our scheme, they really did a good job of dialing us in from an offensive standpoint, and not allowing us to get those pressures, much less getting to the quarterback and putting him on the ground or putting him in situations where he can make a costly error. And then you tie that back into, we had 3 turnovers, they had 0. That's 3 more possessions that we squandered that they had a chance to take advantage of. And when you start looking at those singular plays, there's probably, on this game, there's probably more like 10 or 12, but there's typically 6 to 7 plays that completely change the dynamic and outcome of the game. And that sometimes are just super hard to overcome. But we just didn't look like ourselves on defense or offensively, for that matter.
Offensively, I believe it's that second possession. You and I were talking about it before we went live, and that is, Caton overshot Brock Spalding and had a chance right there to respond and get some momentum early. And then a possession or two later, you had the ball at midfield, or actually about the UTSA 40, 3rd and 2, and then you have a false start. And then Caton Hauser picks up, I think, 4 or 5 yards, and you're going to be facing a very manageable 4th down situation. And I'm trying to remember exactly. I think that was when we went tempo, and UTSA was forced to use a timeout, and then we did not get it. And then you could tell they were expecting all over the spot route on 4th and 3 to Brock.
Yeah. Well, one of the things you talked about at the very beginning of that statement, Bubba, is the penalties. But that play in particular, that could have been one of those momentum shift plays. It wasn't. Could have, should have, would have, right? But the play we shouldn't even be in that situation. We had 12 penalties in this game. That's almost it's almost impossible to overcome that unless you're just elite in talent compared to your opponent, and that's not the case here. I know our fans don't like to hear that because we're used to beating Miami's and having the big wins at Virginia Tech, et cetera. But they're on the same scale and same field as us now. And but have 12 penalties, you're shooting yourself in the foot over and over. And that's what happened at the beginning of the year, if you remember, at the beginning of the season. And we seem to course correct that, but right now it's just become more of a problem. And we better clean that up for this Saturday, because if not, we're going to be in a shootout with a really strong offense at FAU.
Yep. And as you would guess, in a loss of this magnitude, as far as the margin, when you fall behind 44-3 late in the third quarter, and the majority of that offensive production came in that final 15 to 20 minutes of game time, that it was a combination of everything, be it missed throws, penalties, turnovers, you name it. If it could go against the Pirates, it did. The things within our control and those things largely that were outside of our control. But when you make the mistakes we made, even when the things outside of your control go against you, then you don't leave yourself the opportunity to overcome it.
Exactly. And I'm looking at some stats here now. Like I said, I know we had 12 penalties, and I'll just say this, and it's not an excuse and it's not a gloss over, but there does seem to be, from an ECU fan's perspective, leave it at that. It seems to be there's times when we have a chance to get momentum. We get kind of a 50-50 call go against us. And then there's other times, as we spoke about before we came on the air here, Bubba, where we have a defender, whether it's a blitzing linebacker or a nickel or an edge guy for us. They're winning the battle on the pass rush, and they're obviously being hooked, and there's just no flag. And it seems like when we have a play, you see flags come flying in from Zebulon, North Carolina, that far away, and it just doesn't seem to be as consistent. And again, it's maybe purple shades here, but I've watched enough football, and at times it just doesn't seem like we get a chance. We get kind of we shoot ourselves in the foot with our own mental penalties. But there's times when there's obvious plays where there's a holding taking place, whether the ball's incompleted or not, or the runner back stuffed or not, it still should be from the spot minus yards, whether it's completed or not. Like it's not happening enough. Not making excuses. It's just frustrating to see, and I saw a lot of that on Saturday as well.
As we begin to wrap up this show, and here again in a little over 5 minutes, we'll have Ken LaVicka from FAU. That will be, their play-by-play voice, joining us to preview this regular season finale and talk about that high-flying offense with their first-year head coach, Zach Kitley, coming over from Texas Tech, and their quarterback, 6'6", Caden Veldkamp. But as we wrap up this show, I would just say it's very important that we, as pissed off as we are about what happened Saturday down in San Antonio, that we keep it in perspective. This is the first time in 17 games under Blake Harrell that we haven't been competitive. You think back in that Navy game last year, obviously we were competitive. That's the only game we lost under Coach Harrell a year ago. And then this season, the two losses by one touchdown, I should say, against NC State and Tulane. And then, of course, we were competitive for the majority of the game against BYU. So now, the question becomes not only how are you going to handle such a blowout loss, but going on the road again, and then also that you're now out of the title race. I think back to that Houston game. I know you mentioned that to me of 2022. That, of course, was at home on Senior Day, and we're run out of the stadium 42-3 or whatever it was. I think the way things unfold down in Boca is going to say a lot.
Yeah. It's either going to be a tremendous blessing for us to finish out the year with two outstanding performances, or it's going to be something that we all look back on and go, gosh, we had no idea that we're going to have a slide at the end of the year like this. And part of me, I know we were watching the game on TV, we weren't there in person, but part of me was less pissed off than I was at that Houston game because they just absolutely manhandled us. And I know UTSA did, but if you look at it from a yards perspective, et cetera, they just made plays that we've been making at certain times that flips the momentum of the game. We didn't make those plays today or Saturday, that is. So let's just hope that our players rebound, put this one in the rearview mirror, look through the windshield. As Blake says, the windshield's a lot bigger than the rearview mirror. It's the reason why it's bigger. It's in front of you, and comes out against FAU, which I'm looking forward to talking to their play-by-play guy because I'm curious what he even expects for fans and atmosphere and things like that there this Saturday.
And that's been well documented, what I'm about to say, and that is that if the Pirates win on Saturday, you finish the regular season 8-4, 6-2. That will be the sixth time we've won 8 games in the regular season since 2000. So nothing to to turn a nose up about. And then that 6-2 mark in the American, should we win, that would be the best record ever in the American. And then, of course, if you win a bowl game, you win 9 games. Very few East Carolina teams since 2000 have done that. You think back to the Liberty Bowl teams and then the 2013 team that went 10-3, and that's it. So a lot to still accomplish for this team. And as frustrating as it was on Saturday, and I think back to 2007, and also that previous year in 2006 where the Pirates came up short at Rice, and then also in 2007 up at Marshall, and then you follow that up with back-to-back conference titles. So sometimes those short-term setbacks can definitely help lead to long-term success. Let's hope that's the case in this present era. But that will do it for this edition of the show, and rejoin us here in about 5 minutes as we'll be live with Ken LaVicka. But be sure to follow us on social media, on X at Blackbeard Alley, and then, of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then also on Spotify, and then on Instagram we can be found at Blackbeard's Alley. But that will do it for this edition of our UTSA recap, and we'll talk to you here in just a few minutes. And as always, go Pirates.
Painted purple